Okay, so here we go with another Mcfarlane DC Superpowers unboxing, and this is Price Sticker. Put the price sticker right over his name, but we all know who this guy is, right? This is Superman. The funny thing is, though, if you look at the back, or we can still see where the logo is, even though this is the rebirth version of Superman, Reborn, Superman Reborn, yeah, that was the costume he had in Superman Reborn. It's got the Golden Age Superman logo on it, the one from the very first issue of Superman way back in 1939. Why that logo? I don't know. It confuses me. Uh, I also have the Justice Lord Superman that I got from Amazon the other day, and it has like the second Superman logo, the one that would have I think was God, it must have been within the first dozen issues or so they started using that logo. But the one that they used for decades, and I remember it in my early childhood on Superman comics and merchandise and stuff like that before they kind of used a more streamlined version of it, going from the 1980s forward. I don't know for certain, but I suspect it was one that Milton Glazier kind of worked over a little bit. The one that I remember, the earliest one that I remember when I was a kid, that one was Irish Schnapp designed that one. This one was, like I said, it's more in the style of what we saw on the cover of Superman #1, and I suspect that Jerry Siegel or Joe Shuster, more appropriately, probably would have redrawn the logo every time they did a new story. And finally, somebody at DC Comics was like, "Look, let's just have Ira draw one up. He's better at this stuff than you are." And anyway, and then we can just photocopy it and use it on every issue, and you don't have to draw it every single time. And Joe Schuster was probably like kind of overworked anyway. It was like, yeah, okay, cool. So we see the cross sell here, and I have almost all of these figures. The only one that I haven't managed to find yet is the Reverse Flash. So I'm still hunting down the Reverse Flash, and I've seen Batman Who Laughs many times clogging up the pegs, but I refuse to buy them. And also, I don't have this Wonder Woman yet. I haven't seen her in the wild, but I have seen her for retail price on Amazon. So I might wind up getting one of those one day. But we have Superman, Darkseid, Batman. That's the classic Superman and the Hush Batman, by the way. Uh, Green Lantern, John Stewart, the Flash, the Batman Who Laughs, Wonder Woman. That's the more rebirth style Wonder Woman. Nightwing. That's the black and blue Nightwing. Deathstroke, Aquaman, Black Manta, Batman. That's the classic gray and blue Batman. Tim Drake. That's the more brightly colored Tim Drake with the yellow cape. Uh, Tim Drake. Tim Drake. Wonder Woman. That's the more brightly colored, allegedly Bronze Age Wonder Woman. Reverse Flash, Superman. That's the rebirth one. That's this one. I'm holding right here in my hand right now. The Flash, Thomas Wayne, Batman. That's two separate. I'm sorry, that's two separate. The Flashpoint one just says Thomas Wayne. Doesn't even say Batman. Number 19 is Batman. That's Batman in the black costume. Then Robin Tim Drake. That's the one in the slightly darker colored costume with the black cape. And Nightwing, and that's the Nightfall Nightwing with the blue and gold costume. And then the two vehicles they have in the back is the Batmobile, which I do now have the Batmobile. That'll be opening probably fairly soon. And the Invisible Jet, which of course I've already opened. So let's look at the bio on the back, and of course it's translated into several languages. And it says, "Faster than the speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive." Well, can he leap or fly or anything like that? They didn't even finish that phrase. Come on, you guys got all this blank space down at the bottom. You could afford to put one more line on there where you say able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. You could fit that on there for every language, even. Anyway, where was I? Superman fights for the never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way. So yeah, yeah, and it does have a little label, if you can make that out, that says Superman Reborn. So this is officially called Superman Reborn, I suppose. But like I said, this was the costume that was introduced in the Superman Reborn miniseries, which would have come slightly after Superman Rebirth. So he had a slightly different costume in Superman Rebirth, and then this was the one he started wearing in Superman Reborn. And of course, now he's back to wearing the classic tried and true original Superman costume. We're going to compare these two figures, of course. Yeah, I've got the Justice Lords one, so I'll probably be opening that probably sometime this week, but we'll see. Let's go ahead and open them up. And there we go. I don't know who did the artwork on the side, but it's from one of the more modern style guides. I don't believe that's Jose Luis Garcia Lopez, but it is an artist that's trying to match his particular style and model of what Superman's supposed to look like. So it's consistent with that. And there are two little bubbles in here, and one of them is just kind of like this little internal bubble that's just supposed to hold his cape in shape. And like they with the original Superpowers Superman that Mcfarlane did, he's got an S on the back that's way too big. Although I don't think it's quite as big as that one. Not quite as bad as that one. Get him out of there. There's no rubber bands or rubber tabs or anything like that holding him in. Thank God. This is made with the newer type of fabric that Mcfarlane's been using on the capes. So it's got a little more flow to it. It's not that crappy Christmas ribbon type stuff. It's kind of a spandex type material, and it does stretch somewhat. Although I don't want to stretch it too much. I don't want to stretch it out of shape. And it's still doing the thing where they didn't quite sew the cape on correctly. As far as the vintage Superpowers go, this part here on the ends is supposed to fold in, and then the top folds over. So really what the cape should look like is it should have these ends kind of folded down and clip on there like so. So really, ideally, his cape should look a little more like that. Does that look better? I think it looks better. But yeah, that's more like what the Kenner Superpowers cape looked like, because it had those folded down like that. And ideally, that should also cause the whole cape to kind of fold in on itself on the ends. So it should look kind of like that. Now, my first Superpowers Superman, I took the cape off of Wonder Woman because I like her better without the cape anyway. And I found it fit on this one just fine. And I like this cape better for Superman because it's still not the spandexy type fabric yet, but it's still got a better flow to it. And that cape I thought was just way too long for a Bronze Age Superman. He doesn't have the S emblem on the back, but it's also not like a super gigantically huge S emblem, so I'm not going to complain about it. Now, even though this is a more modern version of Superman, he still has that Superpowers looking Superman emblem, which I think is closer to how Kurt Swan drew the Superman emblem in his Superman comics. And of course, the S on the back doesn't match up with that because that's the logo perfect S that you often see on merchandise and stuff. But, you know, that was how the original Superpowers figure was too, if I remember correctly. So, sculpt-wise, these figures are almost identical. And the only difference in terms of the sculpt is the belt. And you can see that the original Superman has the more traditional Superman belt with the oval-shaped belt buckle, belt loops. It's a yellow belt. And I noted when I reviewed that figure at the time that this is a separate piece of plastic, and you could probably switch out the belts for whichever kind of belt you want to. And again, here we go with the Rebirth belt, Reborn belt, whatever you want to call it. But it's a red belt with a yellow buckle. That buckle should be in the shape of the S shield, but we can see that it is not. It is a triangle. And it's not even really sculpted onto the belt. It's just kind of like painted on there. So I almost figure maybe this is a belt that's supposed to be a little more generic, and maybe they're planning on using it for some different iterations of Superman or whatnot. And also we can see when we compare that the reborn Superman has a slightly darker shade of blue than the classic Superman. So not a whole lot darker, but a little bit darker, and that's appropriate because with the more modern style of coloring, they tend to put a little shading and nuance into the Superman costume, and I think maybe intentionally go for a slightly darker color. Whereas, of course, the classic Superman, even up to the 80s, they could only do so much with the coloring in the comic books. So his suit is pretty much just pure cyan. So it makes sense that Rebirth Superman would have a slightly darker blue to his suit. And but yeah, other than the belt, the sculpts are exactly the same. And that means that the articulation should be exactly the same. So let's go over that. So of course we have a head that rotates all the way around. Since I rotated his head around and knocked his cape off, we'll just leave that off for now. So I don't have to worry about it falling on the floor again. So and of course the arms rotate all the way around. This is an 80s style retro action figure. So it has 80s style articulation. It's pretty simple. His arms just rotate around. They don't move up. He doesn't have bicep swivel, doesn't have elbow articulation, wrist articulation, anything like that. This was good enough for us in the 80s. We just pow, there he can punch people. That's what you need Superman to do is to punch the bad guys when he needs to. And his legs are articulated much in the same way. They don't rotate all the way around because he's going to run into his torso there. But his legs move up about that far, move back about that far. It's kind of funny how they move back more than they move forward, because I know my anatomy doesn't work that way. And then he bends at the knees, and that's about the range of motion you get when it bends at the knees. And of course, when in the 80s, when I was playing with these figures, knee articulation is like, wow, that's some added articulation. We got some extra articulation in there. Outside of G.I. Joe, which were probably the best articulated figures you could find, most 80s action figures, it was 5 points of articulation. So, there were Micronauts back in the 70s, and of course, Micronauts wound up influencing the articulation that G.I. Joe would have later on. But of course, Micronauts were in Japan, Microman, that were based off of G.I. Joe. So it all comes full circle, man. So put the cape back on him. One thing that I noticed about this Superman also, as far as the paint scheme goes, is that I wasn't too crazy about this head sculpt when it was on the first one, but I like it a lot better on this second one. And I think it's because they did a little more detailed paint to the eyes. And don't fall. Is there kryptonite around here somewhere? Stand up. You're Superman. Have some pride. All right. So this one, and I say this like kudos to them for doing this. They decided to go with the look of the original Superpower Superman, and his eyes are just kind of plain blue dots that are on there. He's got black hair, he's got black eyebrows, and his eyes were just plain blue dots. And of course, Kenner, that was how they did Superman back in the day. And props to Kenner for actually using a different paint application on Superman's eyes to give him blue eyes. And I don't think there was any other blue paint on the figure at all. Like the body of him was all molded in blue, and they painted the trunks and the boots red, and the tampographed the emblem on there, and the belt was painted yellow. You get ships on the fists, on the knuckles, and on the toes, and you see the blue shining through. So since they didn't use any blue paint on that figure, they had to just make a whole new blue paint application. They went the extra mile, and that's pretty cool. So Mcfarlane, when they did their Superman figure, they just put the blue dots on there and called it a day, because that was how the original figure was done. But for whatever reason, maybe because it's a more modern version of the character, they decided to go a little more detailed on the eyes on the reborn Superman. So he still has the blue dots, but he also has added to it some eyelashes, which, some of the Superpowers figures had eyelashes. Like, I know Wonder Woman did because, woman, so they had to give her eyelashes. But, for example, the Flash, he had eyelashes, if I can get that to focus. I don't know if I can get that to focus right, but trust me, they're there. He has eyelashes. And I think probably the reason Superman didn't have eyelashes is because since they were already putting that extra application on there for the blue eyes, well, he's already getting something special, so he just isn't going to get eyelashes. But Mcfarlane went ahead and gave this version eyelashes, and I think that makes this head sculpt work a lot better than the older one. Like, his hair's a little longer at the top than the vintage Superpowers figure is. You can see, like, it kind of sticks up a little bit right here. But that, to me, it works a lot better on this particular figure, probably because, like I said, they went a little more detailed with the paint job, and it brings out the details of the head sculpt a little bit better. So I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends, are very critical of the Superpowers line for relying a little too much on repainted characters. And of course, when we looked over the back there, we saw at least 2 Supermans and I think 4 Batmans, was it? Yeah, because we had Hush Batman and we had the blue and gray Batman and the black Batman and Thomas Wayne Batman. And if you count the Batman who laughs, I guess that makes 5 Batman figures. And then you had 2 separate Superman figures between this one and the classic version. And then, of course, Reverse Flash is a repaint of the Flash. But, as long as it gets us cool and unique stuff, I don't mind. And, of course, they're going to want to make sure that they keep, either a Superman or a Batman or both on the shelf at the same time. So to me, it makes sense that they would have, kind of constant repaints of. It's just how action figures are these days, and it's not like when they did the original Superpowers, they could just make the one Superman and keep that on the shelf forever. Nowadays they got to refresh everything. So this is a pretty good refreshment of Superman, I think. I actually do like the Rebirth costume. I think it's pretty cool. Reborn costume, whatever costume this is, I like it. I'm not a fan of the new 52 design of Superman. It was the high collar that kind of messed that up for me, and he was supposed to be wearing armor. And why would Superman be wearing armor? Maybe you should also give him a jetpack and a ray gun. He doesn't need that stuff. He's got it biologically. So I actually do think that this figure is an improvement over the first Superpowers Superman in a lot of ways. Like I said, talking about the more detailed paint job on the eyes, I think that really helps with this head sculpt. The newer cape is definitely a lot better than the older cape. I almost kind of want to buy a second one of these now so I can put this cape on my older Superman, but the Wonder Woman cape works fine, so I'll probably just stick with that. But yeah, it makes me hope that maybe they'll do another classic Superman and kind of use some of those innovations and spruce that figure up a little bit. So I think you've got enough excuse to do it. But there are a lot of really cool versions of Superman that I think they could do with the Mcfarlane line. Of course, I'd like to see a Kingdom Come type Superman. I'd like to see a Fleischer cartoons kind of Superman. You could do a 2-pack with Superman Red and Superman Blue, Silver Age version. But you could probably also do the one from 1999 as well, if you really want to do that. I know some people like that outfit for some reason. But yeah, like, again, New 52 Superman, I wouldn't be a fan. I probably wouldn't buy it, but I know some people would, so that probably wouldn't be a bad idea, honestly. Uh, like some people will just buy any Superman figure because they just collect Superman stuff, and they don't care if he's wearing like an outfit they don't like. It's that sort of like you know completist mentality, and I think I can relate to that. But but yeah, like with Batman, there's lots of different versions of Batman that you could do. I got the Zurin R Batman over there. Really excited about that. They got a manga Batman coming out based on the old 1960s Batman manga that was released in Japan. He looks really cool. Uh, so yeah, I'll buy any version of these characters that I feel like adds a little bit of uniqueness to my collection. I almost passed on this guy. I have passed on this guy when I see him on like Amazon and stuff like that, just because I had higher priorities. But since I saw him at the GameStop when I was peeking around on those, I just saw him. I'm like, you know what? I'll go ahead and pick him up because he's pretty cool. So I'm glad I did. It's definitely worth having this guy as part of my collection. So if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this character and this line so far. And we will talk to you next time. Goodbye. Let's see if I can get this to close.